Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
Get that out of the way, man. I feel like it's time we get into, which players have the most to gain from winning an NBA championship this year.
Oof, there's a lot of guys. I feel like it kind of coincides with some of the guys that we had on our list of players that are under the most pressure, but just slightly differs. I feel like Chris Paul and James Harden gained the most from winning a championship. I have those two specifically. There were two guys that we highlighted earlier in the season because one, both of them they have been to the finals. James Harden when he was younger, Chris Paul, with versus the Milwaukee Bucks a couple years back, and these two guys, they're getting up there in age. James Harden's no longer the superstar that he once was. He's obviously still an all-star, a really good basketball player, but he's been to a couple teams now. He's been with Brooklyn. He got hurt. He missed his chance to win a championship. He wanted to come to Philly to compete for one, and now he's teamed up with an MVP level player, a guy who isn't going to be an MVP. And it's looking like it's going to be now or never for James Harden. I feel like he has a couple or three more seasons left into him before his body really starts breaking down. And the same thing applies for Chris Paul. I feel like it's even sooner for him in terms of where his body is at. And now he has an opportunity to play with one of the greatest scorers ever and play with one of the top young shooting guards in this entire league in Devin Booker. And this is an opportunity to capitalize. So these two guys, they have a lot to gain with winning a championship this season. So
For me, I mean, I think it's quite simple. I agree with you on those two, James Harden and CP3, due to legacy purposes. If they get that ring, that kind of sparks the conversation of them. Obviously, they're already all-time players, but if they get that little boost of having the championship, that levels their resume. But for me, I'm gonna go with the player that's already proven. But just this added boost would be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's on another another stratosphere. That's Steph Curry. So if he gets that 5, you can't tell him. You can't tell him nothing. So I mean, yeah, as simple as that. So if Curry gets that 5, that sparks a whole different conversation. So definitely going with him.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. I'll be with CP3 and Harden having the most to gain from this. Been in the league for a while, especially CPO. Being so close to a ring with the Suns early on. Like, was it like two years ago against the Bucks? Him, being there, getting that opportunity, but he couldn't fulfill his dream. I feel like he has a lot. He has a lot to gain from them. Same as Harden. I feel like he has a lot to gain. Being in a championship at a young age and losing to the Heat back in the day, he experienced that, and then just being a phenomenal player, but not making it out, making it to the finals. He's been close with Houston, and the last couple of years, a lot of injuries, a lot of stuff going on with him gaining some weight, him leaving team to team, going to the Nets and now coming to Philadelphia. He's been around a lot, so I feel like he has a lot to gain from this championship. And there's a couple other guys like Curry. If he gets that fifth championship, where does it set him in the all-time greats? We already put him in our top 10, but we discussed him with the fourth ring. Is he close to Kobe or is he up there with LeBron yet? But if he gets his fifth ring, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations throwing him in that top 5, and people are going to be mad saying, "Oh, this and that." But he's gonna have some. He's gonna have to gain some respect if he gets that fifth ring, and people are gonna have to listen to those conversations. Two other guys, man. One guy, Embiid. What does it say if he wins the championship this year? Where can it solidify him? Him never being past the second round. Him being in the league 9 years and not being able to get past the second round, but he can gain a lot from this championship. And another guy I see right now, Jokic. The last 2 years winning MVP, but not having a fully healthy team in the playoffs. This year being again one of the best players, top 2 in MVP votes. Might not win the MVP, but what does it solidify for him getting this MVP with getting this Finals win with 2 MVP? He can gain a lot from it too. So those are the couple guys I have, but mainly CP3 and Harden. I feel like they gain a lot from it.
I hear you guys, man. You guys make some interesting points for those guys. But I feel like, when it comes down to the most to gain from winning a ring this year, man, the players that I believe, have the most to gain from winning an NBA championship this year are one being Steph Curry. I'm gonna agree with you guys on that one. I believe Steph has a lot to gain from this ring, simply because, I feel like the ring last year solidified him a spot in the top 10 greatest players of all time discussion, right? So, he was always on the edge, and people always made comments about him not necessarily having a Finals MVP under his resume. And they gave him a lot of slack for it. So, with him solidifying his season last year with the ring and the Finals MVP without Kevin Durant, obviously it boosted his status for being a top 10 player of all time. And I feel like with another championship ring and another NBA Finals MVP, I feel like there's this gonna, like Big H mentioned it, there's gonna be a lot of uncomfortable discussions that are gonna have to be held in terms of Steph Curry and where he ranks amongst the best of the best. Because right now I probably have Steph Curry around my 6 or 7 spot. On the outside of the 5, on the outside looking in on the top 5. But I feel like if he gets number 5, man, it's a completely different conversation we're having. Somebody's gonna have to take the boot, and I'm not too sure who's gonna be, but it's going to be some uncomfortable discussions. And then number 2, I got LeBron James himself, the GOAT. I feel like a ring for LeBron James now, at his age in his 20th year on this Lakers franchise. I feel like, it would do wonders for the GOAT debate. It would do wonders for the GOAT conversation. I feel like if LeBron James goes through the gauntlet where he comes into the playoffs as a 7th seed and he knocks off the Memphis Grizzlies, and he plays the Golden State Warriors and knocks off them, and then he goes to the Western Conference Finals and knocks off the Phoenix Suns, and then he goes to the finals and he knocks off the Bucks or the Celtics, I feel like there's no better case for LeBron James to solidify himself as the greatest player of all time, especially in a season where he surpassed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the all-time scoring list. So I feel like, LeBron James has a lot to gain from winning an NBA championship, and it would solidify his entire career. Not that his career is not already solidified as it is, like he's already stamped and who he is and stuff like that. But like when we talk about this debate between who's the greatest player of all time between him and Michael Jordan, we always give Jordan the edge because of the rings and the 6 Finals MVPs and the undefeated finals and being undefeated in the finals. I feel like if LeBron James delivers 2 championship rings in a span of, what is it, 4 years for the Los Angeles Lakers, I feel like the discussion might just be over right then and there. A lot of people are gonna have to crown LeBron James as the GOAT, and obviously a lot of people go back and forth on this debate, and old heads got LeBron, old heads got Michael Jordan, and, the newer cats got LeBron because they grew up watching him and stuff like that. But I feel like LeBron James, he's one of those guys that have the most to gain from winning this championship. Joel Embiid, I do hear you, Big H. I feel like if a ring for him would change the narrative completely. Obviously not being the playoff performer and all of his playoff shortcomings, it'd all be forgotten with this championship ring. Simply like the same way we viewed Giannis, where he was a great player in this league early on. Once he figured it out, but he was unable to get over the hump and stuff like that. And then once he did it, we don't necessarily talk about him, getting bounced in the first round and the second round against the Miami Heat in the bubble and stuff like that. Like this guy's already solidified it as one of the greatest players of all time. He's somewhere in that top 20, and I feel like a ring for him would push him into that top 15 discussion. I feel like when we look at Giannis's resume as it is right now, I can't lie, man. I think he's probably around, what is it, like 27, 28 right now, going on closer to 30. He's got himself a nice resume, man. And we know how many years he's got left in this league. He's probably got a good 6 to 8 years left. So he's able to add a lot, to that resume. He might just enter himself into the top 5 or top 10 discussion, in 6 to 8 years time. So, but the one player that I'm not too sure how you guys feel about him in this situation, but it's Kevin Durant. Do you guys feel like he has the most to gain from, winning a ring without Steph Curry on this Phoenix Suns team?
He has a lot to gain just because
I
finally
feel
he
like
finally silences that whole he can't win without Steph Curry narrative right there. If he wins that, then I think people are gonna really give Kevin Durant his like respect, where they're gonna be like, he finally won a ring without Steph Curry. So that's always been something that's been against Kevin Durant, him not being able to win a championship without Steph Curry. So he'd have a lot to gain from this.
I feel like the teams that he's been on, he's never like the teams he's been on, bro. They always have superstars. They always have star players on it with him, And for him to go from OKC with Westbrook and that complete team that they had, choking that 3-1 lead to the Warriors, and then coming to the Warriors after that, and then the Warriors winning a ring when he goes to the Nets, and now he's on the Suns. And it's like, if he loses with the Suns to the Nuggets in the second round, what does it say about KD? Are those rings, mainly Golden State's, they wanted for him basically, and he hasn't done anything outside of that? It shows a lot. I feel like, him losing, it shows like, hey, this guy really can't win by himself, or he needed the Warriors to win. But if he does win another ring with the Suns, I feel like he has a lot to gain. People are, a lot of people do put him top 15, but skill wise, talent wise, the guy's one of the best players to touch the court, especially scoring wise. He's probably the best scorer to ever touch the court. And if he does get this ring, some conversation, some stories might switch up. It might be different for him. So I do see him. He has a lot to gain from this. What do you think,
Yeah,
Henry?
I'm gritted right now because I got an interesting take on this. I'm not gonna lie. So if this guy bus rides this chip, it doesn't mean anything to him. I'm not gonna lie. But if he has to win a Finals MVP for this stretch, say if obviously it's a possibility this can happen. Like if D Book wins Finals MVP, this chip does not mean a thing. This guy's gonna have to win Finals MVP to solidify himself and be that guy. I know he won it with the Warriors and all that, but for this chip, he has to win Finals MVP for me to be like, okay, yes, KD, you got it. And hey, after last year, he's on a microscope for me. I'm watching him. I'm gonna just let that be known.
Yeah, I feel like I do agree with you though, Bandit. I think Kevin Durant, he's got to be the bus driver in this spot, and I do think he has good enough. He has a lot to gain from winning this championship with Phoenix, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like him going to another super team. So, he's got to really assert his dominance on this team. It's going to be really tough when you got a bucket getter like D Book on him, but running alongside him. So, but yeah, I mean that pretty much wraps up who we got. The guys that are under the most pressure to win a championship.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lake, now that's overkill.